Hello everyone, it's averydawnside and welcome back to another video. Happy October! As many of you know, I absolutely adore the fall and Halloween is my favorite holiday, so on my channel I try to make October this entire month-long celebration of all Halloween and spooky themed videos to get you all in the mood. And with that being said, today I'm going to be telling a very highly requested story, and that is the time that I had a stalker. Now, before we jump into it, I do want to put this disclaimer out there. Stalking is not something to be joked about. It's a very serious matter, and you're going to hear me talking about this in a less serious tone in this video, but that's because it's been a few years since this actually happened. However, if anything like this is happening to you currently, please reach out, please make someone aware of the situation because it can be very dangerous and you want to make sure that you're staying safe. Don't let it get as far as I did in this story, and although this is something that's like cool and interesting to hear about, it is something that happens almost every day to someone out there, so please be aware of your surroundings, be aware of everything that's going on, and just stay safe and make everyone just like in the loop and be aware of that. So just wanted to put that disclaimer out there. This is my story. I'm not gonna glorify it or dramatize it in any way because I think this is important and it is an interesting story to hear about, so just keep that in mind for the video. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and get right into it. So the story starts my senior year of high school. I was in a ceramics class. For context, my senior year I had a lot of fun classes, not super serious ones, because I had already completed most of the credits that I needed to graduate by the time that I was a senior, so I had a really laid back schedule and I loved ceramics. I had taken it the 2 years prior to this year, so this was my third year, so I was in advanced ceramics. I absolutely loved it, and so once you reach Ceramics 3, like I was saying, advanced ceramics, it's a very individual class, and I say this because it's an important note. It's a very solo run. You kind of do your own projects. There are like probably 10-ish kids in the class that are also in advanced ceramics because it is hard to get up to that level, but I was lucky and had the opportunity to take the class 2 years before, so I was in it. But it's important to note that this is a very independent study class. You kind of do things on your own, so keep that in mind as I tell the story. Anyways, I really loved the teacher. She was super duper laid back, and like I said, I just really liked having that freedom of having something to work on. So I would go to ceramics class and pop in my headphones and work on my projects, and it was really like relaxing and just chill, a good vibe to have, you know, for senior year especially, and I had it in the morning time, so it was really nice. So for context, a little bit of background, in advanced ceramics, since we had such a small class, we also worked with this program that my school has that works with students who have special circumstances. So that can be anything, for they either need like a little extra help in school, they've had something traumatic happen to them, they're on the ASD spectrum, stuff like that, that every like situation is individual for that program. But they typically, you know, just to de-stress and take away from the normal stress of their life, come into, you know, more fun classes like this, and they're paired up with teachers to like surveil them and everything, and do fun activities with us. So they would kind of do their own thing, and then the advanced ceramics class would do their own thing, but it was in this big art room. So those kids would come in like 3 days a week, not really every single day, and obviously I would interact with some of them because they were really, really nice, and like we would just kind of hang out when I wasn't doing stuff, so that's an important thing to know. I was also really great friends with the teachers that taught that class, the little side class that I'm talking about, so it was really cool to be able to just interact with them. But so for the most part, I would always have my headphones in, be doing like, I really like the ceramics wheel, and so I would always be on the ceramics wheel. I wouldn't really talk to a bunch of people, kind of do my own thing. So this one kid in the program particularly developed quite an interest in me, and he definitely had some differences in sociability and stuff like that. I'm not 100% how to word that because it really is just something you have to like experience in person. But moving on. So that one kid developed quite an interest in me in the class, and that was totally fine. He was a little bit socially awkward, and that was, again, totally fine because a lot of those kids in that program had been through a lot. And so with that being said, of course I would interact with him, but I definitely had to get my work done because I was working on a really, really big project for that year. I wish I had pictures to show, but if any of you are curious, I was doing an entire like dinnerware set of circus-themed ceramics pottery, so I was doing a lot of like elaborate like sculpting an elephant and stuff like that. So I really had to focus on my work. So I would interact with these kids at the beginning, but this one kid just really, really, really enjoyed watching me do ceramics. And like I said, that's totally okay. I just don't really have the capability to interact. But it began to get a little bit strange. He would just be very like touchy and like very in my personal bubble. And like I said, he does have some social differences. And again, I don't 100% know how to explain that. But he did have some social differences and didn't 100% understand like traditional social cues. And so it just got a little weird, but I didn't pay attention to it too much because this is where it's at my own fault, but I'm too nice of a human to be like, hey, that's like a personal bubble boundary, please don't do that. So I just carried on with my stuff, and he would like watch me and sit next to me and like do all of that and just, you know, kind of vibe. We'd both vibe, and it wasn't weird in the beginning until he started to get like touchy and a little bit strange. And so keep in mind, like I said, individual class, had my headphones in. I would always try to be like, hey, I'm working on this, I can't really talk right now, and he just didn't understand that. Like, he would just keep talking and talking and talking, which at some point, like, I just had to like really hone in on my work, and I kept my headphones in, and like I felt bad because I was ignoring him, but also I couldn't talk to him the whole class. So for a little bit of background too, we're gonna call this kid, we'll call him Joe. So Joe is a very like developed, large, like big sculpted man. He was like 6'4", like a big presence in the room for sure, and it was kind of intimidating a little bit because I am only 5'5", and I'm like pretty frail and small. Like I'm not built or anything, but he was a big built, like very intimidating. So when he would sit next to me on these tiny stools and got like very touchy and everything, one day in class in particular, he came in and he clearly wasn't in a good mood at all. But again, he like sat next to me and like watched me do my stuff. And the people that he was under 24/7 surveillance, I, again, don't know the background or history of the subject or why he was under that much surveillance, but I'm going to get into that. So, but obviously those teachers that were supposed to be surveillancing him had 10 other kids that they were also taking care of in the class. So at no fault of their own, he just like wasn't 100% watched when he was with me, which is okay because it didn't get out of hand until things started to happen, which we're gonna get into. So one day I'm working on the ceramics wheel, and he sits next to me and he's talking, and I'm listening to my music in headphones because he would just kind of talk to himself over in the corner and stuff. And I had my music down low because he was clearly like very visibly upset, and it was making me a little bit nervous, just because he was very hot-tempered, and when he got upset it would like snap. So with that being said, he was clearly very upset and began talking about something, and I felt bad, so I asked, I was like, what's wrong? And he was like, oh, nothing. And then so I put my headphones back in and continued to do my work. And then he starts talking, and I had my music down low, and he starts telling me about this horrific incident, which I'm not going to go into details with because it's his own personal business. But he started to tell me about his family situation. Again, I'm not going to tell you the whole story because private information, but let's just say that it was a very traumatic, like horrific thing that had happened to him, and he was in a group home, so he was no longer with his family or anything. And this is where I started to piece things together of why he was in that program with the special surveillance and everything, and I wish I could give more detail, but I really can't because, again, privacy reasons and stuff like that. But that's where I kind of pieced together, and I was like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because he went through something very emotionally traumatizing, and that kind of set him back into that social differences that I was talking about. So I learned a lot of context that day. He definitely overshared. I wasn't sure what to say, what to do. This is not something that I have ever encountered in my entire life. It was really personal. So after class, I went to like his teacher, his like little surveillance person, and I was like, hey, I just want to let you know that, like, obviously you can tell Joe is really upset, but he shared this with me, and I'm not sure what your protocol is on this, but I just want to let you know of like how he's feeling. And the teacher was like, oh, thank you so much for telling me that. Like, we know today's a really tough day for him. For context, it was the anniversary of the traumatic event that had happened exactly a year ago that day to him. And they were like, oh, thank you for letting us know. Like, we're so sorry that we're not able to like constantly like try and keep him away from you. We know he's a bit much, but we have our hands full. And I was like, it's okay. Like, I try to set boundaries with him and everything like that. And then they were like, yeah, it's just kind of nice to see him open up to someone, because he doesn't open up to anyone like that. Like, he's a very closed off person, and he seems to have really taken a liking to you. So they were under the impression, as was I, that it was just kind of like this harmless, like, he needed someone who he felt safe with, and so on. So that's really what it was for the first like month. And this happened at the beginning of the school year. This happened in September. So flash forward past that moment, it was after that day things took a turn. Like, it completely changed. The vibe completely changed from this like harmless like little interactions and stuff like that. But after that moment, everything changed. So he became very, very attached to me because of this, and he would, after ceramics class, he would always walk me to my next class, like behind me, not walk with me. He would always follow me to my next class, and I didn't really think anything of it, but then it started to become obsessive. And so he would follow me from ceramics class to my next class, and then I would start leaving that class, and he would be waiting outside of that class for me to walk to my next class. And he wouldn't really say anything to me. He would just watch me and follow me. And it began to get very, very like obsessive and like scary, because obviously it's scary being followed by, especially as a woman, like it's very terrifying to be followed by a much larger man, because you don't know what they're capable of, in my instance. So it was very intimidating, even though it was in a school setting. So continuing on, I got a little freaked out by this, so I tried to change my route in school. For context, I went to a very big high school. It was 3 stories high, like huge school. So I started to change the routes that I would take to my classes in hopes that it would kind of give him that message of like, I don't really want to see you that much, like you're kind of scaring me a bit. Well, no. He figured out a week later, after I changed my routes, he figured out the new routes that I began to take. Because the second day that I had changed my routes, he came to me in ceramics and he was like, I noticed you don't walk the same way anymore. I was like, oh, like it's just not convenient anymore for me. And then he figured out the new way that I would take to my other classes. So continuing on, it got a little bit creepy, but at this point I was like, okay, he probably just is a little like interested in me, maybe in a romantic way, and like it's harmless to have a crush, so like it's fine. Well, the end of September, beginning of October rolls around, and it's homecoming season, and I was nominated for homecoming queen. Spoiler alert, I ended up winning homecoming queen my senior year, which was really cool. But obviously with homecoming court, homecoming queen, anything like that, comes a lot of like responsibility and a lot of attention, like public attention. I was also the captain of our dance team. I was very like that girl. I'm no longer that girl, but if you're catching up what I mean, I was definitely that girl. So yeah, homecoming rolls around, homecoming queen, and I had a bunch of really close guy friends. And I told them about this. I specifically told my one friend, we'll call him, all of my friends' names start with J. We'll just call him friend. So my friend, I told him about what was going on. He was like, that's not okay. Like, that's scary. Like, do you want me to walk you to classes? And I was like, yeah, maybe that would like help him understand. And so my friend started to walk me to all of my classes and kind of give off that impression that we were like in a relationship, but we weren't in a relationship. It was just kind of to ward off the other guy, Joe, because he was definitely getting like a little too obsessive. And this caused Joe to get very, very, very upset. And so I went to ceramics class all week that week, and he would sit next to me and ask a million questions about who the guy, my friend, who was walking me to classes was, and like why I was doing that, and how like disrespectful that was to Joe, and all of that stuff. And so it just got really out of hand. And then I won Homecoming Queen later that week, and my friend actually won Homecoming King, so it ended up working out. And Joe was very, very upset that we had won together, and said some really unsafe and questionable things about how he did not like my friend that had been walking me to class. So my friend who had been walking me to class comes to me later that week after we had won Homecoming King and Queen, and he was like, hey, I think you need to tell someone about this kid. And I was like, why? And he was like, well, I know you don't really feel safe with him, but it's just starting to get a little bit out of hand as well, because he came up to me in the hallway. And I was like, what? Like, Joe had gone up to my friend and said, and I asked, I was like, oh, like, why did he come up to you? And my friend said that Joe said that he threatened him in the fact that if he continued to date me, keep in mind, this friend wasn't actually dating me, we were just trying to give off that impression so that Joe would back down. But Joe threatened my friend and said that if he continued to date me, but wasn't actually dating me, I'm trying to think of like the way to describe this, that he would attack him. And I was like, you're literally kidding. He, like, what? And so I had to tell Joe's teacher / surveillance person about this, and they were like, yeah, like, I'm so sorry that happened. Like, I would just recommend, like, we don't have a huge handle on Joe right now because we're swamped, like, with stuff, so I would just recommend maybe not walking with that friend. So I started to walk alone. I changed my routes again, and things were smooth sailing for a little while. Flash forward to November-ish, October, like end of October, beginning of November, so a few weeks after the homecoming thing had happened. Things had fizzled out. Joe had kind of, like, taken a step back from me because his teachers were really surveillancing him and, like, wouldn't really let him come near me anymore. But so the way that our ceramics classroom was set up was there was a back closet that you would go and put your projects in overnight so that no damage got to them, or like any dust or anything. And so one day I was walking back to the ceramics closet to put my project in there, and it's a small, dark, like, walk-in closet room, and I'm walking back there and I hear, like, footsteps, and I'm like, okay, it's fine. So I'm the last one to put my thing away, and I'm in the closet, I'm putting it on the little shelf, and I hear the door close behind me, and I'm like, oh gosh. And you know that feeling that you get in your gut when you just know, like, you just know something bad is happening? That, like, I felt like my heart dropped to my stomach, and immediately I knew what was going on. And I turned around, and I hear the click of the lock on the door, and it was Joe. Joe had followed me into the ceramics closet, and here we are in the ceramics closet. Joe had locked the door, and we're both standing face to face, and I'm, like, internally freaking out. I literally, my body went into fight or flight. But I kept it cool, and I was like, oh, hi, Joe, like, just to try and keep it casual, because I wasn't sure what, like, his temper was that day or anything. Oh gosh, this is, like, a weird story to tell people about, but, yeah, so we're both standing there facing one another, and I ask him, I'm like, hi, Joe, like, what's up? And Joe steps forward towards me, and I'm like backing up into this corner, trying to figure out what to do, like if like calling for help is like the best way to get help. But the problem was, this is a cinder block room, like it's very like closed off, like not a lot of like leeway on people who can get in and people who can get out. So Joe and I are just there. So I'm playing it cool, having a casual conversation. I'm like, how are you? Like, what do you need? And Joe, word for word, this is ingrained into my brain. He goes, you're gonna be my girlfriend now. And it really took me back, because I was not expecting that. And I was like, oh, Joe, I'm so sorry. Like, I'm not interested in you like that. And he cut me off, and he was like, I don't care. Like, you're gonna be my girlfriend. I was like, Joe, like, I'm really not interested. Like, no. Like, and he was like, you don't have a choice. And so he steps forward again when he said that to me. And I'm like fully backed against the wall at this point. And he was like, you're gonna be my girlfriend because I'm in love with you. And I was like, Joe, I don't feel the same way about you. And again, he just keeps repeating, like, I don't care, you're mine. Like, you don't have an option. Like, you don't have a choice. And so I'm pressed against this wall. Joe's just inching towards me. And I literally, like, didn't know what to do. And he steps really close to me, and he's about to put his hand on me, and it was like a movie scene. But someone, like, starts banging on the door and was like, insert my name. And was like, are you in there? And I quickly, like, swiped to the side of Joe as he was about to, like, touch me or grab me, and unlocked the door. I'm like, please help. And so Joe gets escorted out of the room. I get escorted out of the room for questioning on, like, what happened, because they weren't sure, like, exactly what had happened. And so I had to go to the principal's office, fill out an entire report, because clearly I was, like, really shaken up at this point. And I had to talk to his, like, surveillance teachers, because they got in huge trouble because they hadn't been watching him, and, like, it could have been really bad. Like, I was really lucky that I got out of that situation, because, like I said, I don't know what this kid was capable of, and it was, like, a very vulnerable position for me to be in that closet, just locked in there because he had locked us in there. And so I, after then, was really, really shaken up by the situation, and they took Joe out of the class for a portion of the time. Not the full time, because they, like, legally couldn't do that, but they asked me, like, what would make me feel the safest, like, if I wanted to press charges, if I wanted a restraining order. And I told them, I was like, no, I really don't want to make things complicated. Like, I know this kid has been through enough, because I knew that traumatic experience that had happened to him, and I was like, I really don't want to make things complicated. Like, as long as he has someone with him that will, like, actually surveillance him and make sure that I'm safe, like, that's okay. Like, we don't have to do anything past then. And they were like, are you sure? And so the principal set that stone in plan. He was now under, like, double 24/7 surveillance. We always had 2 adults with him, so that one was always watching him and one was Sarah's backup. And we continued in our class. So the obsession that he had with me after that did not stop, but it did kind of fizzle out, because he wasn't allowed to sit near me or speak to me or follow me to class or anything anymore. So that was nice, that I did have that leeway. So that continued on until the end of that semester. So our semester ended in January, and then we had, like, a break, and then we came back. So second semester is happening now, and Joe is still in this class with me, unfortunately, and we're working on our final year projects. which was, like I said, I was working on the ceramics circus project, and Joe was working on some other thing with his group. And at the end of the semester, we have this like presentation thing, but I'm gonna get into that. So after that, it kind of settled down for a little while. Like, nothing super eventful happened through like January to like March and April-ish, which was good because I had my own stuff going on like outside of school that was really overwhelming to me. But Joe and I went on spring break, like separately, like we just had our school spring break. And so we came back from spring break, and it was time to give like our final project presentations, because then like at the end of the year we just had like reflection time and like exams and stuff like that. So we came back and we are getting ready to do our final project presentations, where we all sit, like the entire class, the advanced ceramics class and the like special program all sits around in a big circle one day, and we share like the meaning of our project, like the tools that we use, like the things that we learned from it, the emotional like signification and all of that. So we're going around in this circle, and Joe has a very big like pot that he made, and it's blue. I wish I had a picture of it, but it's blue, it's got like red hearts on it, and it's yellow on the inside, like all the primary colors. And so it gets around to Joe's turn, and Joe stands up and he looks me dead in the eye. Keep in mind, this is in front of the entire class and the teacher, who is fully aware of the situation. He stands up, he looks me dead in the eye, and he holds up the ceramics piece, and he goes, "Insert my real name. This is for you because I'm in love with you and you still don't have a choice because you're my girlfriend." And immediately he walks over, like he shuffles over as quickly as possible. He puts the thing in front of me, and then he was escorted out of the room because obviously that was inappropriate behavior, and his like advisors weren't comfortable with that. I was super uncomfortable, like, because he just placed this pottery in my hand and I didn't know what to do. And so he was escorted out of the room after that and had a like entire tantrum in the hallway. It was really, really bad. And so I'm left with this giant piece of pottery, and I asked the teacher, I was like, "What am I supposed to do with this?" And she was like, "Honestly, I think the safest thing you can do is take it, because I think if you don't take it, like, we don't know what he's capable of." And so I took it, and so for the first like 3 hours of the day, I'm carrying around this giant ceramics pot, and my friends are like, "What is that?" And I told them, and they were like, "That's super unsafe. Like, you have to get rid of that. He's gonna think that you're okay with like what he said if you keep it." And I was like, "You know what? You're right." So I didn't know what to do with it, so I went to a janitor that I was friends with. I was friends with the janitor, don't ask. But I gave it to the janitor. I was like, "Can you please do something with this? I like don't know." And he was like, "Just throw it away." And I was like, I don't have the heart to do that. Like, knowing that Joe spent the entire semester making that for me, even though it was creepy, like, I didn't want to throw away someone's hard work. So gave it to the janitor, assumingly the janitor threw it away. And I continued on with the rest of, you know, my exams. The class ended and everything. So flash forward, it's the final week of my senior year, and after that event had happened, Joe was no longer allowed to see me anywhere in school. He was kept completely at opposite ends. They literally requested my schedule so that they could make sure he was on the opposite side of the building from me whenever I was in specific classes. And so with that being said, it's the end of my senior year, literally the last week. Things are pretty smooth sailing, and our school goes on lockdown. And this isn't like weird for my school, because we had a lot of students that had medical issues, and every time that we had a student have a medical emergency, we would go on lockdown so that the ambulance could come. So it wasn't weird for us to go on lockdown. But this one day we were in school, we were in my 6th hour of the day, and the principal comes on the overhead, and the tone of the voice was very different and very, you could just tell, off. And he was like, this is not a drill, like we are on lockdown, like please like follow the blank protocol. So we locked our classroom door, covered up the windows, all that stuff, like got into lockdown mode. And the classroom that I was in, my 6th hour, gets a call. So my teacher answers the call, and while the teacher's on the phone, she looks at me, and I was like, oh gosh, what did I do? Keep in mind, we're still in lockdown. And so she pulls me over after this phone call. She's like, hey, blank, can I speak to you? And so I go over to her desk, and she was like, okay, there's going to be another announcement on the overhead lifting the lockdown. Everyone else is free to leave, but you cannot leave. And I'm like, what on earth is going on? So the principal comes on the overhead, announces that everyone's free to leave, and so I stay behind in the classroom. And this is like after school, like school had ended, everyone leaves to go home, I had to stay in the classroom. And I'm like, what is this for? Like, what's going on? I thought I was in trouble. Like, I literally had my life flashed before my eyes. I was like, what did I do? Like, I was trying to think of all the things I had possibly done wrong in the school's eyes. Like, I thought I was in huge trouble. But so I'm sitting there in the classroom with my one English teacher, and she's super nice. I love her. I was really close to her. And everyone leaves. All the kids leave to go home. And I drive to school. Keep in mind, I was driving myself to school at this point in my life. So I'm sitting in the classroom, everyone has just left, and I asked my teacher, I'm like, what's going on? Like, why am I still here? And she was like, well, I can't fully explain the situation, but some other people can. So there's a knock on the door. And I kid you not, like, I wish I was joking about this, because this is when I was like, oh shoot, like, this is a lot more serious than I thought. 4 police officers walk into the classroom that I'm in with the teacher, including the school police officer, the principal, the 2 surveillance people that typically watch the student, Joe, that was obsessed with me, and they all walk in the room, and I'm like, am I about to be arrested? Like, what did I do? For context, I wasn't going to be arrested, but they sit me down, and they were like, so the reason that we had to go on lockdown was because Joe had like a tantrum episode and was saying some very unsafe things, and he was searching the building for you, and we weren't sure his intentions, so like, we're sorry to cause this like event for you and hold you after school hours, but we had to make sure that Joe was off the school premises before it was safe for you to leave. I was like, I'm sorry, what? Like, huh? And they were like, so Joe is now like getting on his bus like to go home and everything. We had some services come in and calm him down, but just for like extra protocol, we're gonna have the officers escort you down to your car and follow you home, just to make sure that you get home safely and that nothing happens. And I'm like, what on earth is going on? And so the 4 police officers in like a literal, like, one was in front of me, one was behind me, 2 were on my sides, escort me down the 3 flights of stairs to my car. The one officer waits with me, the other 2 officers go and get their car, and they were like, okay, go ahead and lead the way to your house. And luckily I lived like literally 3 minutes from the high school, so I drive home with these 4 police cars behind me. Joe was a year younger than I am and was being transferred to a different school because of this, with more like higher surveillance and stuff like that. And so basically we had a meeting with the school later that week, and they just like wanted to check in and see how I was doing, like apologize for not having enough like surveillance on him and like letting it get to that level, which was really nice, because it was nice to not feel crazy and like actually have someone acknowledge that like what was going on was very unsafe for me. Obviously I wish it had happened a little bit earlier in this situation, but I'm glad that it didn't like happen too late, if that makes sense. But yeah, I just had to make a report on the entire situation so that it could go into Joe's file. And yeah, then I graduated high school. I did all the rest of my senior activities, and I hadn't seen Joe since that last moment. And that is the story of the time that I had a stalker. Wow, I feel like I haven't thought about that story in a really long time, and telling it in detail makes me realize how, like, actually crazy it is. And that's why at the beginning of the video I said, like, if you are ever in a situation like this, please, please, please don't wait. Don't be as passive as I was. Like, definitely be aware of your surroundings and reach out for help sooner rather than later, because you don't want it to get to the extent that it did with me, because a lot worse things could have happened. I'm very grateful that they didn't. But yeah, I guess that's my little spiel. I hope you all enjoyed this video. It's nice that I can turn something traumatic into something, you know, entertaining for other people and kind of educating as well. But yeah, stalking is no joke, so just be aware of your surroundings, of your situations, stay safe, and make sure that you're making people aware. But I literally have been talking for like 40 minutes. If you made it to the end of this video, I don't know, comment something and just say I made it to the end of the video. But I love you all so, so much. I need to go get some water because I'm tired of speaking now and debrief after this. But thank you all so much for watching. As always, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe. If you enjoy these story times, let me know if you'd like to see more. And without further ado, I will see you in the next video. I love you all so much. Thanks for watching. Bye!